Buddy, it's pretty late in the night, but your boy's going to do this video because I think it's worth the while to talk about. I had something I wanted to say for most of the day, but I just didn't get across to doing this video. So it's very late in the night. I really need to go to sleep like everybody else, but I say I'm gonna put this out there. All right, so we're going to be talking about, as you can see here, Blue Beetle and Gunn's DCU, and we're going to talk about why restoring the Snyderverse is important in a different way. We got to add something a little bit different today. Let's get into it. I'll start off with scripture, so you guys are going to have to. Isaiah chapter 19. I'm going to go for verses 1 to 4. It says, "A message came to me concerning Egypt. Look, the Lord is advancing against Egypt. He's riding on a swift cloud. The idols of Egypt tremble. The hearts of the Egyptians melt in fear. I will make the Egyptians fight against themselves, brother against brother, neighbor against neighbor, city against city, province against province. The Egyptians will lose heart. I will confuse their plans. They will plead with their idols for wisdom. They will call on spirits, mediums, and psychics to show them which way to turn. And I will hand Egypt over to a hard, cruel master, a fierce king, says the Lord Almighty." We actually have a situation like that happening with Warner Brothers. And we're going to discuss it. So I kind of picked this scripture for that reason. Let's get into it. Blue Beetle. Blue Beetle has been has not had a great run so far, right? Blue Beetle opened to domestically $25 million. And currently, it stands at $49 million as of August the 22nd. Today's August the 23rd. So today, it probably got a little bit more money added to it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the the stark contrast between what people in the industry are saying, what Hollywood's saying about this movie, and what the average audience or the average person is thinking about this movie. I'm going to go into Digital Spy, and I'm going to read a little bit. This is by Ian Sandwell. It's Digital Spy. And he is going to say why Blue Beetle never really stood a chance. There's an easy narrative stemming from Blue Beetle's topping the US box office with a softer than expected debut. For some, it's the latest DC flop after the studio's other 2023 releases, Shazam! Fury of the Gods and The Flash, both suffered at the box office. It can't really be superhero fatigue, as Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 and Across the Spider-Verse have done well, so it must be Blue Beetle's fault. Some people say that. That's what he's saying. But as much as labeling a movie a flop after its opening weekend is jumping the gun, after all, look at Elemental, crossing $450 million after a slow start. It is also reductive. In Blue Beetle's case, the wider context of its release has to be considered. Blue Beetle might eventually be objectively labeled a box office flop if it doesn't rebound or sustain a long run, but it is also likely that it never really stood a chance in the first place. Unlike its fellow DC releases in 2023, or even Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, if we wanted to extend beyond DC, Blue Beetle didn't have to overcome poor reviews. Its current Rotten Tomatoes score of 76% is solid, if unremarkable, and there's a lot of positivity in the critical response. The audience appears to like it too, with 92% audience score. Although a B plus cinema score isn't the perfect rating, it's reflective that even though the movie might have had its issues, it's still an enjoyable superhero outing. This is just a reading, so you have to put it all in perspective. In different circumstances, it's the kind of warm reaction that should have led to bigger opening numbers. However, the market that Blue Beetle is opening into is anything but normal, despite recent Barbieheimer success. For one, the ongoing strikes meant that none of its cast, including Cobra Kai star Zolo Mariduena, could do promotion for the movie. It was left to director Angel Manuel Soto to take on the promotional duties alone, and he's just not the same draw as its stars. This is what they're saying, but as we all know, Barbie, nobody promoted Barbie, nobody promoted Oppenheimer. It was reported recently by The Hollywood Reporter that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem's box office earnings were hurt by 15% due to the cast's inability to promote the movie. While it might be a new take on the Turtles, it's still a movie based on existing and well-known brand. Blue Beetle might have its fans in DC Comics, but you can't call the character a well-known property. It's hard to quantify exactly how much the lack of promotion hurt at the box office, but it certainly didn't help in trying to establish a new superhero for the wider audience. Original movies never have been guaranteed hits. Even in the all-conquering MCU, it usually takes a sequel for a character to bring in big bucks. This has become especially prevalent in an era where we've seen so many superheroes, leading to the likes of Shanghai, Eternals, struggling. Blue Beetle needed that wider promotion from its cast to break out into wider cinema-growing audience. It's not hard to imagine that there are many who didn't even know it was coming out because of a lack of promotion, for instance, the late-night chat show circuit in the US. On top of that, the fact that Blue Beetle wasn't even promoted at Comic-Con marked a missed opportunity to build on hype. In early screenings for Blue Beetle, in the same way The Flash built early praise, could have made a difference, even if the cast wouldn't have been able to attend. But as well as having issues with the wider audience, Blue Beetles faced the same DC-specific issues that hampered Shazam, Fury of the Gods, and The Flash. Fans knew there was a new universe coming, but there was confusion about what that means right now, leading to the apathy towards 2023 DC releases. James Gunn might have said that Blue Beetle is the first DCU character, but he muddied the waters by saying it wasn't the first DCU movie. It would have been a shame to delay Blue Beetle in 2024, but perhaps the confusion would have been lessened if it had been moved to after Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, assuming that it still comes out at Christmas. There's no connections to the current DC universe in Blue Beetle, so it wouldn't have impacted the movie at all. As if those outside issues weren't enough for Blue Beetle's opening weekend will also have to be impacted by Tropical Storm Hillary in the US. All of these are excuses, but nonetheless, let's just keep it going. It delivered a $25 million debut, slightly down on the estimated $25.4 million after a lower Sunday gross than expected. It marks the lowest debut for a DC movie, bar Wonder Woman 1984, with $16.7 million, and that movie was released at a time when cinemas were operating with limited capacities. Would it have been much higher debut without the storm? Probably not, as a result of everything we've just discussed. It's certainly an extra factor, though, that will be needed to be taken into consideration when viewing the debut in coming months. In light of everything, perhaps Blue Beetle might have stood a better chance if it was released directly to HBO Max as originally planned. See, this was a movie that was supposed to go to HBO Max. Well, it's now called Max, which is very interesting. I talked about this on Twitter, but anyway. As the first live-action superhero movie with a Latino lead, it absolutely deserved its big screen outing, so we're glad that it got a cinema release. I'm not. It wasn't built for cinema, and we'll explain a little bit further. However, a streaming debut would have freed it from inevitable discussion about whether or not it's a flop. Arguably, more people would have seen it on streaming and given it a chance when they wouldn't necessarily go to the cinema for it. Exactly. Maybe then the conversation would have been about how it's a travesty that the movie didn't get the cinema release it deserved. Well, here's the thing. If you released it on HBO Max and it seemed to be very good for cinema, then you would just put it into cinemas. It's common sense. Maybe that happened in an alternate universe. In the one we're in, though, Blue Beetle has found itself part of a harsh debate that shouldn't be as simple as whether it's a flop or not. Okay? And that's the guy. The guy's Ian Sandwell. He's a movies editor at Digital Spy. Ian has more than 10 years in movies journalism experience as a writer, editor, starting out as an intern in Trade Bible Screen International. He was promoted to report and analyze UK box office results, as well as carving his own niche with horror movies, etc. Okay. So we have apologists for Blue Beetle, right? And I just wanted to read one of them. I'm going to not take too much time. You guys time because I need to go to sleep. You guys need to go to sleep if it's nighttime in your part of the world. So I'm not going to try and burden you with too much, but I wanted to read this article. I want to read a couple of other articles so you can see what people in Hollywood or people, who feel that Blue Beetle for some reason is a very good movie or whatever. Okay, Blue Beetle. This is Collider. Blue Beetle budget breakdown. Another box office flop for DC? It's a question mark. The film opened number one at the box office, but will that be enough to save DC from another financial disaster? Behind the scenes, Blue Beetle is a remarkable achievement in its Latino representation and its ability to work with a limited budget. The film promises to deliver a memorable experience while being creative about its resources. Check out the budget breakdown for Blue Beetle and how they're doing at the box office. So, Blue Beetle serves as a homage to the Latino community, which means that it was essential for the movie to champion Mexican and Mexican-American actors, taking on the lead role as Jaime Reyes and blah, 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 blah. According to The Hollywood Reporter, paying for superhero movie lead roles typically hinges on actors' experience. At the last 10 years, first-time superhero leads have consistently received salaries in the mid-six-figure range. Likewise, directors venturing into Marvel or DC for the first time helm a superhero film might also anticipate earning a similar mid-six-figure salary. Okay, this thing starts to seize up on me. What are you doing? You're fucking kidding me. No, it doesn't even want to open. Play up your ass, man. All right. While the exact budget details are not available to the public yet, Director Soto did let it slip that they had to get creative when handling the action scenes due to budget constraints. In his original plan, Blue Beetle was destined for a max debut. Right? Blue Beetle was destined for a max debut, a choice that entailed a lesser budget compared to the substantial funds typically allocated for theatrical releases. As a result, Soto had to ditch pricey special effects for more practical ones. While this decision may prove to be a challenge, Soto shares how the team was able to get creative with their effects. We're able to be smart about how we handle a budget. That is why we went practical. That's why we went to real locations. And oddly enough, that also makes it feel bigger and more immersed because of the third act takes place in a real fortress that is 500 years old in Puerto Rico. That's not like a green screen set, So being able to do that and see the magnificence of this building and how imposing it is and being able to capture that and have fun with this adventure in it, it was a way for us to be able to stretch our budget in a way that kind of delivers on it, I guess. Blue Beetle takes place in the metropolis of... Okay, so that's the story. I don't care about that. They captured scenes also in Decatur, Georgia. They also captured scenes in the actual locales of El Paso, Texas, Los Angeles, and San Juan, Puerto Rico. The cherry on top is the standout location for the third act of Blue Beetle. The team chose none other than the Castillo San Felipe de Morro, an ancient Spanish fortress nestled in the old San Juan, Puerto Rico, and blah, 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 blah. Not to mention its popularity. Blah, blah, blah. Now, the site for filming didn't come without a considerable price tag. Currently, precise information regarding the marketing strategy for Blue Beetle remains undisclosed to the public. However, it seems that any promotional efforts involving actors might be hindered by the ongoing SAG-AFTRA strike, which is caused by Hollywood's biggest studios failing to reach an agreement with the Guild's fair demands. Throughout the strike, the actors were precluded from participating in press junkets and discussing forthcoming releases, including interviews or social media. But loyal fans have taken it into their own hands to promote Blue Beetle under the hashtag Blue Beetle Battalion on Twitter. Promotion for the film has been continuous thanks to organic support. So you know the Blue Beetle Battalion. Okay, yeah. In addition to its grassroots backing, Blue Beetle has partnered with Toyota for its promotional endeavors. The prominent inclusion of Toyota Tacoma in the film portrays a collaboration with the unyielding superhero Blue Beetle. The movie seamlessly integrates the trusty strength of Tacoma and blah, 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 blah. So this is all about budgets, right? So how much did Blue Beetle need to make at the box office to break even? This is the important part. The production budget for Blue Beetle amounts to the modest $104 million. In the usual scenario, a film must generate double its production budget to achieve a break-even point. It's not double, but in this case, you have to get 2.5 times the production budget now, these days. By applying this principle to Blue Beetle, the film would require earnings of around $208 million to recover its cost and break even. For Blue Beetle to be deemed a success, it would need to finish its run around $300 million. Blue Beetle achieved $26 million during its opening weekend release, following a $10 million revenue on Friday. This outcome places the film slightly ahead of its initial weekend prediction, which hovered around $25 million. The film also earned additional $18 million from 64 international countries and blah, 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 to a humble $43 million. Currently, the movie lags behind Birds of Prey and Shazam! Fury of the Gods. The two films are widely recognized for falling short of their expectations regarding their box office revenue. As it stands, Blue Beetle has the second lowest opening for a DCU film, with Wonder Woman being the lowest opening. Despite what some might perceive as slightly underwhelming opening figure, Blue Beetle debuted at number one position, dethroning Barney from its month-long reign atop the domestic box office. Currently, Blue Beetle is maintaining its standing alongside the newly released film Strays, which is engaged in fierce competition with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem for the fourth position. While Strays only managed to get $8.5 million and blah, 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 which we don't care about. Okay, so basically, what they're saying is that the budget for Blue Beetle was a tight budget. They were able to implement actual locations and stuff to save money on the budget. And because, it wasn't, they had George Lopez and a couple other people, but when you really think about it, most of these people were more debuting or they were not well-known actors. So they had to pay them a whole bunch of money. So what they did was they saved them a bunch of money that way, and they worked with a tight budget. They did more practical effects than they did, CGI. And as a result of that, they were able to save money, and they were able to do the film very cheaply. Now, this is kind of Walter Hamada thing. Blue Beetle came under Walter Hamada. So we're trying to go use lower budgets and use those lower budgets to get films which wouldn't make as much money, but they would be able to at least break even. But that has not worked. It backfired a number of times with a number of films. Now, the thing about Blue Beetle I want to say here, this is again an apology. They're being apologetic, Collider, because they're trying to get Blue Beetle to win. So the people at Collider, the recent guy that just talked there, I'm going to give you some more. I want you to see the feel for what is happening here and the sentiments of the people who are writing these articles. Okay. All right. Comic book movie. Okay, here it is. Listen to this one. So this is CBR. Okay. Blue Beetle will still be a hit, even if it's another DC flop. Blue Beetle arrives in theaters after a bad run at the box office for DC Studio, and even if it fails to earn big grosses, this movie will endure. The debut of Blue Beetle is a big movement for the DCU, especially James Gunn said this is the first film in the new continuity. It's also the most prominent role for a Latino superhero in the franchise. However, with the shaky summer for DC blockbusters and the SAG-AFTRA strike, Blue Beetle could just likely flop as be the next big hit blockbuster superhero franchise. Yet, even if the film fails to perform at the box office, it's the kind of movie that will become a hit over time. So this person, barring no reason, gives us this statement that it's going to be a hit over time. Okay. Despite the runaway success of the billion-dollar grossing Barbie movie and Oppenheimer, this has been a bad summer for box office. Movies that should have been smashes like Mission Impossible, Dead Reckoning, and Indiana Jones and Dial of Destiny both failed to gross enough to break even. Even more troubling, the last three DC movies, Black Adam, Shazam, Fury of the Gods, The Flash, all underperformed. There were many reasons why, from inflation's effect on disposable income to general preference for waiting to watch movies on streaming. Similarly, the wax sector tried pause a late night talk show, still a powerful vehicle for movie promotion. It's a lot of blah 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 blah. I really am not into the blah blah blah. The Blue Beetle didn't start his career as the DC Comics character. He was part of the Charlton Comics line of heroes, a company purchased by DC and incorporated into his canon. On top of this, Jaime Reyes is the second generation version of the character. The original Blue Beetle was the classic rich guy with cool toys kind of hero. Jaime is an alien, has an alien scarab that bonded with him, giving him powers and suit and armor and all of that. In a way, Blue Beetle shares a lot in common with Iron Man before his 2008 movie debut, yet unlike 15 years ago, audiences have a lot of superheroes to choose from. The first Latin-led solo DC movie is a celebratory milestone, but it comes with baggage from the rest of the mismanaged franchise. Yet from the moment the first trailer debuted to social media regions from early screens, Blue Beetle seemed fun. A fun movie with charming characters and brilliant visuals will always do well, even if it's out of theaters. Okay. Freeze. I want you to hear what this guy says. He almost like doesn't even know what he's doing. But I'm going to say it again. Yet from the moment the first trailer debuted to social media reactions from early screens, Blue Beetle seems fun. A fun movie with charming characters and brilliant visuals will always do well even after it's out of theaters. Kids whose families identify with the culture the Reyes family represents will see themselves in a way they haven't seen before. This alone means the film will be a hit with the demographic. I don't know what is this guy talking about. Anyway, though kids in general will find things in Jaime's life that they can easily relate to, cultural or otherwise, it's the kind of film that promises to have much longer life than a 6-week or so theatrical window. So this guy's now starting to preach as if this is reality. He's really predicting, but he's speaking as if this is the reality of the situation. Unbelievable. However, families may want or need this. I can't even believe these guys write articles. Like, this is not journalism. All right, anyway. However, families may want or need their kids to wait until Blue Beetle hits Max. Ironically, its original debut destination. Second time they say Max is its destination. I want you to remember that. Whether it's because their parents are doing Barbieheimer or a third time, or simply convenience, Blue Beetle's audience may not show up in the theater. So this guy's creating his own narrative. Anyway, but the film will find an audience, and it will likely keep finding new audiences year after year. My God, my goodness. One time is in the film with one of DC's more marquee heroes like Superman and Wonder Woman, casual DC fans may rush to catch up on the movie they missed. The movie business is almost incredibly short-sighted, and Blue Beetle is a movie with a long future. Okay, so another apologist. Unbelievable. I can't even believe this person actually said that. All right. So, it flopped, but it will be a hit. All right, now. Now, I did this for two reasons. The first thing I wanted to say is a lot of people talk about comic book movies should be fun. Comic book movies are really made for kids. Comic book movies should reach kids. Comic book movies and comics are made for kids. Marvel came in the game and did some fun comics, and they pulled it off. You know, they pulled it off. Marvel. I want to show you something. On my phone is a list of superhero films. Let's start with films based on DC Comics, and then we'll go to Marvel. I want to show you something. We'll talk about animated films as well. Tell me if these are films for kids, and tell me which comics they come off of. Batman 1989. That was made for kids. Where did Batman 89 come from? The Dark Knight Returns inspired Batman 1989. Tim Burton's Batman 1989. Okay. Batman Returns 1992. Made for kids? They actually, you know what happened? Some parents actually protested to Warner Brothers that Batman Returns was too violent. Let's keep it moving. Constantine. Constantine was made for kids. Batman Begins. Batman Begins was made for kids. The Dark Knight, was it made for kids? Watchmen, was it made for kids? The Dark Knight Rises, was it made for kids? Okay, I'll keep it moving. I'm not gonna do any of Zack Snyder's movies because we know Zack Snyder makes movies for everybody, but he addresses adult situations. He wants to address it in a mature way. So I'll skip all that. First of all, was Birds of Prey made for kids? That's rated R. The Suicide Squad, was it made for kids? That was rated R. The Batman, was it made for kids? Joker, was it made for kids? Y'all don't say nothing about those movies. You don't say anything about James Gunn and his Suicide Squad movie, which was rated R. You don't say nothing about Birds of Prey. That was rated R. You don't say nothing about Joker. You praise Joker. You praise the Batman. You know the Batman's not made for kids. We're actually going to have Joker Folie à Deux, which is part 2, in 2024. That's not made for kids. Who are you fooling? Who are you fooling? I'm not done. This is only live action I'm talking about. V for Vendetta, was that made for kids? That's a comic book, by the way. The Losers, was that made for kids? The Kitchen, was that made for kids? These are comic book runs. DC has them. This is from Vertigo that now DC has bought over. Road to Perdition, was that made for kids? A History of Violence, was that made for kids? Don't get me started. DC, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Now you could argue that it was made for kids in a way kids could watch it. But it was a movie that was not built on fun and jokes. It was an adventure movie, but not fun and jokes and giggly smiles and blue skies. It was a Marvel movie. Keep it moving. Red, was that made for kids? I'm just asking. That's just DC. Let's go Marvel. And we're just doing live action because that's what we're in. Blade, was that made for kids? Was Blade made for kids? X-Men, okay, X-Men was made for kids. Kids could watch it. But X-Men was, again, it wasn't, especially the early Marvel movies, they weren't fun movies. What do you call fun? Everybody want to talk about fun. It's so much, it doesn't have any fun. Well, these didn't have any fun. But it was spectacular. Got X2. The Punisher. Okay? And then for those of you who know a little bit more history, Conan the Barbarian, was that made for kids? Venom, Let There Be Carnage, was that made for kids? Come on now. Let's talk for real. So this illusion, comic book movies were made for kids and comics are written for kids, that's nonsense. And it only is applicable for certain directors they talk this nonsense with. When the Russo brothers did Captain America Winter Soldier, Y'all wasn't talking about if it was made for kids. I'm not done. Okay. Time Cop, was that made for kids? This is Dark Horse Comics. Hellboy, was it made for kids? Now that had a little comedy in it. Right? Sin City, was that made for kids? 300, was it made for kids? Come on now. That's Dark Horse Comics. These are actual comics. IDW, right? Live action. Dick Tracy. You can say Dick Tracy was kind of made for kids. We're not talking about the old Dick Tracy now. You know, it could have, but it was violent. It was violent. Okay. The Crow, was that made for kids? Come on now. "30 Days of Night," was that made for kids? All right. I don't want to go into animation yet. Image Comics. Y'all have heard of Image Comics? Spawn. Right? The Crow. Mystery Man. Bulletproof Monk. Bulletproof Monk, was that made for kids? You know what I'm saying? You had Kick-Ass and Kick-Ass 2. I believe Kick-Ass was rated R. And Kick-Ass 2 was rated R. Had you know, there was supposed to be kids in the movie, but it wasn't made for kids. The Old Guard, starring Charlie Theron. The Old Guard, that's on Netflix. That wasn't made for kids. Okay? So what is this talk about comic book movies and comics are made for kids? What talk is that about? We don't even want to go into the animated series. I got one more. Atomic Blonde. You know that's a comic book, right? It's from Oni. Extraction and Extraction 2 on Netflix. Those are all comic book movies. So I don't understand. I do not understand what people are talking about when they say comic book movies. You know, Zack Snyder, he didn't do too dark comic book movies. What are you talking about? These movies are dark. Extraction's dark. Atomic Blonde was dark. It was rated R. What are you talking about? So let's talk about, you know, now what you notice about the industry is this. The industry has been pushing Hollywood and certain gatekeepers. You know, Ice Cube said there are gatekeepers all around. And you have these gatekeepers who feel there's a perfect way to show Superman. And there's a perfect way to show these characters. I will not forget when Superman Returns came out. You know, everybody was praising it. You know, it was a perfect Superman. And it flopped. Batman and Robin, oh, this is a perfect movie for kids. This is going to sell toys and stuff. Flopped. Green Lantern. Perfect Green Lantern. This is the ideal Green Lantern. This is how, you know, it's in the comics. Flopped. Right? Fast forward to today. Blue Beetle, perfect Blue Beetle. You know, you watch it, all the gatekeepers out there talking about how good Blue Beetle is. You don't deserve to flop, and you hear the apologists apologizing for Blue Beetle, talking about it will be a hit in the future and blah, 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 blah. Listen, that's what I'm going to say. It flopped. We all know the digital release is coming out in September. Warner Bros. Already advertised that. They're already cutting their losses. They realize it is what it is. It flopped. All your perfect comic book heroes, your perfect comic book movies, your so-called perfect Flash, your so-called perfect perfect Wonder Woman movie, perfect Suicide Squad movie. They all flopped. Then you make excuses after. Now here's the interesting thing. The movies which you said are not kid friendly, the movies which you said are not fun, the movies that you said, you criticized, you gave low critical scores to, the movies that make people think, those are the movies you hate. You want people to follow because you want to set the agenda for people, and you want to brainwash people's minds. You don't want people thinking for themselves. You want to tell them what to think. That's what you see as a vehicle for comic book movies, and Marvel was good at doing that. But when you think about it, and when you turn on your brain, because they're saying it was for kids, but really and truly, what you really want to say is, no, we want movies to be like Marvel. Marvel changed the game and blah, blah, blah. But you just have to think. The Dark Knight came out the same time with Marvel. It did extraordinarily well because it was what it was. A movie not for kids, but for adults as well. Kids and adults, not solely for kids. Right? It was unapologetic, and it stood out. When Zack Snyder did Man of Steel, he did a much more mature, developed a story of the character to show the limitations of Superman, but yet at the same time show an evolving Superman. Not only that, but he also showed the challenges that would be faced by a character like that if they were to exist in the real world. Great take. Now it's considered a masterpiece and they're saying all kinds of crap. But if you go and watch, the critics never got it. They never understood. It's still rotten on Rotten Tomatoes. Why is it that comic book movies need to be simplistic, need to have a clear storyline, and need no layers to it, just what it is on the surface? And then you can explore the concepts of that, and that's it. Why do it have to be like that? Who's the gods that determine that happens? Why can't people enjoy and have fun out of a movie that takes itself seriously and is serious? So what people are saying is, this movie, Blue Beetle, it's probably fine. It's okay. It's not terrific. It's not fantabulous. It's not Wonder Woman 2017. It's not doing anything really extraordinary. It's playing it safe with Latinos, basically representation. But it isn't doing anything out of the ordinary. It's following the usual generic superhero beats of a Marvel movie. Right? Doesn't make you think anything differently. You don't leave the cinema better than you came in. You're going to leave the same way you came. Oh, yeah, it was Latino family. All right. Family is very important. That's the take home. It's a bit shallow. Okay? What we've been having and where superhero fatigue comes in is when you keep on hitting people over and over the head with some theme park entertainment. It gets old. There's only so much. The suit, the suit, the suit, the suit. Who cares? What can the Scarab do and what the features are of superhero? I don't know why they moved from developing these people as people to see the person behind the superhero. They moved from that to look at what I can do. Look at my powers. Look, I can flex myself this way and that way and this way and that way. That's that. We've been having that now for how many superhero movies now? A couple. You know, Marvel got away with it because it was at the time people didn't know the characters, so they were getting familiar with them. So look what I can do. I can do this. I can do that. And the heroes would fight against each other, and then they'd come together eventually in the end. That isn't very deep. Okay, it's superficial. It's superficial. Okay? And people can take so much of that and then they get fatigued by that. And you see the fatigue in Marvel, you see the fatigue in DC. And the irony of the situation is, a movie that universally got praised, the people who were in charge of Warner Brothers at the time refused to put that movie in cinemas. It was Zack Snyder's Justice League. In fact, they tried to sabotage it while it was on, now called Max. And the irony of the situation is Zack Snyder he formatted the film to fit on IMAX. On IMAX. And this is the movie that they put on Max. And the movie that was earmarked for Max, which is Blue Beetle, they put in cinemas and they had a space for it in IMAX. They dislodged Oppenheimer to put Blue Beetle into IMAX. Nobody goes to see it. Warner Brothers has already quit. They're already saying, oh, we're going to have digital release in September. They've already quit. They know. People can make excuses. They already know this movie's cooked. Theme park rides. You've heard about this. Cinema is different. Not every single film needs to go on the big screen. Sometimes you can keep them on the silver screen, on a smaller screen. And Blue Beetle was made for a smaller screen. You can see the bars. Where Blue Beetle, you go in the cinema, you can see bars because it's not fully fitting the screen. You know why it's not fully fitting the screen? Not because you can fit it on IMAX. No, it's because it belongs on TV. This was it would have been extraordinary on TV. It would have been a great TV segment, a TV series. Just like my friend's Jaime's, not Jaime, the kid that stars there, he was in Karate Kid. What they call it? It's not Karate Kid. It's called whatever the name of the thing is, right? That's where that movie should have been. They should have had it running as a series. So they did the opposite of what was necessary to get success. You put Zack Snyder's Justice League tomorrow into IMAX and into cinemas, it will perform because Zack Snyder has a fan base that is loyal to him. It's there already. And not to mention his movie is good. It's a fantastic movie. It's 4 hours long, but it's a good movie. You know, to see that on IMAX it's going to be quite a feeling. So I don't understand why people in the industry think that this Blue Beetle and Green Lantern and all the last set of movies that came out, which are safe movies, and some of the stuff, it's just they're not properly finished. Black Adam, was properly done. Given that, Blue Beetle was properly done. The Flash was not properly done because of so much changes that had to happen in it. Wonder Woman was not properly done. The action scenes were horrible in that. The Suicide Squad was properly done. It was a properly done movie, but people don't dig James Gunn's jokes in DC because you have to understand the demographic you're facing. These are not kids. It's not kids coming to see DC. They're trying to play to a demographic that DC doesn't have. You have a younger generation, yes, who watches DC and stuff, but they have to come with their parents. Now, the teenager ones, they can go, but they still got to get money. They got to get allowances to go because most teenagers don't work. And people don't have that kind of cash anymore. Money's hard to come by. So people are not going to just... I used to go to the cinema almost every week. I don't do that anymore. So you have to understand that people are going to go to something that's worth their time and worth their money. And for some reason, these crazy people in Hollywood are living in their own dream world. They're in their own separate world out there where they're not connected to the reality of the situation. They're not connected to what's happening in the real world. They're always in hypotheticals. Superman wouldn't do this and Superman wouldn't do that. How do you know that? In this world? And he's developing and he's only like one day on the job or whatever it is? No, you can't say that. So I think there's a disconnect between these people and reality, quite frankly. I want to pinpoint one more thing. So I just said comic book movies, you clearly see, can appeal to adults and yes, kids to some degree. And some of those are not for kids at all. Okay? They're big, you saw a plethora of comic book movies like that. And some of y'all don't even know those were comic book movies. But yes, there are comic books that do this. Because comic books, you know, I don't know what the current writers in comic books are doing. But I can tell you, in my time, before my time, particularly 70s, 80s, 90s, comic books were covering political themes. They were covering social commentary. They were covering pop culture. Okay? In this politically correct environment, people are getting soft. They're getting soft. The comic book movies addressed issues. Some comic book movies were deconstructing their heroes and then reconstructing them. So this is not nothing new. How do you think we got the Watchmen comic from Alan Moore? How do you think we got that? You think it was somebody thinking in the box, trying to play it safe? Fun? Oh, it's a fun comic. Come on, man. Y'all need to wake up, as Zack Snyder would say. You guys are sleeping, you were napping, and I blame Marvel to a certain degree, the MCU, for that. Because they started making these fun movies, which are easy and cheap to do, hoodwinking the audience. They're going along for the ride, and it's not deep anymore. It's just superficial nonsense. All right? I just wanted to say that. So, I want to show you something else. We go back into history a little bit. The MCU box office, the first 6 films. Iron Man had made $585 million because, as you know, and as I said, when you are starting something, when you are rebooting something, you don't make a ton of money. Okay? So it's very illogical for somebody to say, well, Man of Steel needed to make $1 billion. How is it going to do that? It's coming off of 5 Superman flops. Superman 3, Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, Supergirl was actually in between that. And then you had Superman Returns. Man of Steel was going to be the 5th Superman movie. coming off of 4 straight flops, and it still managed to make a profit. Unlike unlike Batman Begins, which just broke even. So Iron Man, 585 million. Incredible Hulk, and Iron Man was coming off a successful Marvel film, by the way. Incredible Hulk, 265 million, it flopped. Iron Man 2, 621 million. Thor, 449 million. Captain America, the first Avenger, 370 million. And then the Avengers movie, which was $1.5 billion. They had a total of $3.8 billion. Now listen to the 6 DCU movies. Man of Steel, 667 million. Batman v Superman, 873 million. Suicide Squad, 747 million. Wonder Woman, 822 million. Justice League, 657 million. And Aquaman, 1.146 billion. For a total of $4.9 billion. In other words, through the first 6 DCEU films, they grossed more than the first 6 MCU films. I want to show you something else. We're very familiar with this, that Zack Snyder's Justice League spawned Restore the Snyderverse hashtag. And that hashtag, 1 second, here it is. That hashtag broke Twitter records. It broke Avengers Endgame in that it grossed more. It was more tweets for a sequel to Zack Snyder's Justice League and Restoring the Snyderverse than even Avengers Endgame, which had the record before that. It was also the #1 discussed film on Twitter in that year, and a recent poll by Ed Boon, who is the creator of Mortal Kombat, saw Zack Snyder's Justice League edging out 55% to 45% Avengers Infinity War and Endgame. In other words, this movie also won an Oscar fan share moment. It won the Oscar fan share moment over Avengers Endgame and Spider-Man No Way Home. Okay, and those movies grossed a lot of money at the box office. And what I'm trying to say is, it was in that category. Not only did it superseded it, people pick it over these other movies. So what I'm saying is, Warner Brothers Pictures, Abdi and DeLuca, do the right thing and put Zack Snyder's Justice League into cinemas, into IMAX, and let it do its thing. I know that Dune is coming out in November, but November the 17th, right after Dune comes out on November the 3rd, you can have 2 movies running simultaneously. You had it with Barbie and some other WB movie that both made money in the cinema, and I see Dune and Zack Snyder's Justice League making money in the cinema as well. You know what I mean? Yes. The other thing I want to say is, before wrapping up tonight, because it's late and I'm rocking back and forth because I'm sleepy. Just like how Egypt was being taken down, it was taking down itself. James Gunn is knocking down Peter Safran's movies, man. Peter Safran's movies are flopping under James Gunn. Do I think James Gunn should be fired? Yes, because now he's had 4 straight flops under his leadership. Plus, he debuted a movie in DC and it flopped. He's not a good fit for DC. James Gunn epitomizes and he represents a DC that's trying to be like Marvel. trying to be like the MCU. It's trying to be a theme park ride, not cinema. A lot of notes are passing, and that's not good. We don't want Aquaman movie to flop. Why not let Warner Brothers Pictures have the DeLuca? Why not put Zack Snyder Justice League into cinemas and IMAX? Put it in there. The lowest grossing Snyderverse movie that had full Snyderverse support is Man of Steel. $668 million. So if you put Zack Snyder Justice League into cinemas, remember, people have seen it on smaller screens, but to put it in IMAX, to put it in big screens in cinemas, people are going to come out and support that heavily. And the movie just needs to make $267 million to wrap up everything, break even for all the problems connected to it. So Justice League 2017, its own production cost, what Justice League 2017 earned minus, what it was supposed to get to break even. You put that together with the budget for Zack Snyder Justice League and what it would take to make it break even, you get $267 million. All right? So what I'm saying is, that's a very gettable total. And watch it, that movie outperform Blue Beetle, The Flash, Aquaman, not Aquaman, Black Adam, all the movies since Birds of Prey. Watch it outperform them. And the major reason it will do so is because it has a fan base that supports these movies. Zack Snyder has a fan base. Rebel Moon has come out. That also needs to be in IMAX and cinemas. Because that is, again, you can see Zack Snyder as a cinematic director. You can see that. Okay? So, this is not rocket science, man. This is not rocket science. Warner Brothers Pictures, Abdi and DeLuca, you guys already had Zack Snyder put, Zack Snyder Justice League into IMAX. It's IMAX ready. Just get it into IMAX. Get it into the cinemas. Let people go out there and support this movie. If you want to do it, in the major places, which like China, the US, UK, Brazil, But I would prefer if you do it also in small countries like mine, where we have IMAX. If you want to just exclusively do it in IMAX, whatever you want to do. But what I'm saying is at the end of the day, put it out. That's what I'm saying. Put it out. Let it make money. Let it clean off its debt. And let it make money. Because I don't understand. Of all the movies you don't want to put out, Zack Snyder's Justice League. That thing's been performing since. It's been a success since. Why you wouldn't do that? Plus, we have the air cut. The air cut's almost done as well. So anyway, I just wanted to put that out there for you guys. There's more I want to talk about, but I'll talk about it some other time. I got some polls for you guys to fill out, but I'm not going to do it tonight. I'll do it tomorrow. I already put the polls up on Twitter. I put up some polls also on Facebook. But I got to go. I'm going to get you guys later. I am Christ. I am Disciple. If you continue the way you're going, Warner Brothers, you're going to destroy DC. And you know what's amazing? Abdi and DeLuca are performing. You have 5 hits this year. 5 hits. Barbie is the biggest hit of them all. And I'm saying, Warner Brothers is making money. Pictures. But DC's not doing nothing, man. DC Studios, you might as well not have DC Studios. You might as well just have Abdi and DeLuca running everything. Because currently, DC is not doing well at all. I'm going to catch you guys later. I am Christ, I am Disciple. You guys have a good one. I'm going to get some sleep now. Definitely going to get some sleep.